Dear Agma Schwa, on June 7th, the cursed conlang gods asked of me, demanded of me, a sacrifice, a creation. And the truth is, I have sacrificed many things to bring you this. My sanity, my dignity, my tongue. But it has all come together to create the beautiful masterpiece you are about to witness. My name is Tom Coolery, and this is my entry to the third Cursed Conlang Circus. So get vote, we do fall. Let's start, as any good conlang showcase would, with a phonology of the language. The consonants here are ma, na, nga, ba, ta, da, ka, ga, pa, ta, ka, sa, za, sha, fa, ha, za, ja, wa, ra, ya, la. The vowels in this language are I, U, I, O, O, E, O, A, O. It should be noted that all of these vowels have phonemic long variants, and that this language is most often spoken in a lower voice with the mouth rounded on most syllables. And also, if this phonology looks a little Englishy, that's part of the joke, do not cry. This language's phonotactics just don't exist because of how complex the grammatical system is. And speaking of the grammar of the language, let's go over what nouns are inflected for and what verbs are inflected for. Nouns are inflected for 1 of 5 cases and 4 numbers and 5 animacy classes, while verbs are marked for 1 of 8 tenses, 1 of 4 numbers, and 1 of 3 moods. But now, you may be wondering, how are we actually going to mark for these things? Will we use prefixes and suffixes? Will we even use infixes if we're feeling a little dubious? Maybe even using mutation if we're feeling completely devious? And if we were to feel totally diabolical, that mutation could apply to every single consonant and vowel in the word? Well, fear not, my friend. The answer is yes. We will be using all of them at the same time. Here's how it works. Every single grammatical category in this language has not only an affix that is connected to it, but also has a table of mutation that is connected to it, that displays all of the patterns of mutation that are associated with that grammatical category. Now let's say a word has 2 suffixes. The base word will be mutated for the first suffix and then the second suffix, but the first suffix itself will be mutated for the second suffix, and the second suffix itself will be mutated for what the first suffix marks. This also carries on if there are more than 2 suffixes, just 1 would get marked for 2 and 3, and 2 would get marked for 3 and 1, and so on. This language is a naturalistic language, so sometimes there are irregular forms in the initial affix as well as in the mutation tables. There are also some notable allophones in the language. For example, the unvoiced pa and ta become the voiced ba and da when placed in front of an approximant, like la, wa, ra. It should also be noted that the spelling of the word does not change despite all of the immense change that happens to its pronunciation during grammatical inflection. Not only does this make reading fundamentally impossible, it also means that literally nothing in the language can be understood unless the base word can be seen and the pronunciation of the inflected word can be heard at the same time. Let's run through the full inflection of a single word. First, we have to know that this language is VSO, synthetic, and adjectives and adverbs come before the nouns and verbs that they mark for. And while we won't need it for this specific example, this language has nominative accusative alignment. So the word that we will be using is that for I will walk, which is the base word of walk with the future tense, indicative mood, and first person. The base word for walk is pronounced "spraus," and with the three affixes, that becomes "sprauso." First, let's take the marker for first person, which will be mutated for the future tense and then the indicative mood. Next, the marker for the indicative mood will be mutated for the future tense and the first person. And finally, the future tense marker will be mutated for the indicative mood and the first person. And then the original word will be mutated for the future, then indicative, then first person. And this all comes out to our final word, which is pronounced as "rejoices." The final thing I want to cover before the actual translation is how this language deals with names. Usually if one doesn't know someone directly or has only heard about them through a story, it's more typical to not use their first name and instead just to use their job title. And now with all that said, I think we can move on to the translation. So without further ado, this is how to pronounce the Agama Shuya text and so Gebfo Wudufa. About three things I was absolutely positive. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, I was a part of him, and I didn't know how potent that part might be. At first, it's for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him.